Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the I Thrive series, Building Your Business for Profit. We're going to be wrapping up this series with talking about our staff performance. We're going to have Dr. Ron Meeker, Jay Binkowitz, and myself are just going to be discussing ways where we can bring all of these key areas together with our staff and improve our profitability in our business.
So, Patty, in continuing our conversation about scheduling, a couple other quick points on that, because it is such a critical thing. And what you said is such a dynamic thought that most folks wouldn't even think about, is understanding that how scheduling contributes to people's EBITDA, right? Because you're controlling what's happening in and out of practice. But so everybody in the practice, and I kind of giggle when I say this, but I think we all know it's true. Every member of the practice has their hands on the checkbook, is how I like to think, right? So every single person who's doing something that's creating an expense, maybe an unnecessary expense, whether it be an unnecessary labor expense because we're not doing everything we should be doing, or actually buying something, or frame board management, spectacle lenses, supplies, any member of the staff that has any involvement in any areas is writing checks. Right? So that they're increasing our expenses. Conversely, every member of a staff has an opportunity to generate revenue. And I always encourage folks to really think about sitting down with each member of the staff and making sure that they are aware of the things that they can do to help generate revenue versus the things they can do to help reduce expenses. We have to make it really clear to everybody on how sensitive that is. And, and bring that back to scheduling. I once worked with a practice that I absolutely was blown away by. I walked in the morning, and the first thing you smelled was Otis Spunkmeyer chocolate chip cookies. Like first thing in the morning, and you're like, oh my God, I need cookies, and I need hot chocolate, and I need ice cream, and all of a sudden, all the bells are going off, right? And I started laughing. I was like, oh my God, this practice smells delicious. and the person behind the counter who was in charge of the scheduling book would make a fresh batch of cookies every morning, which for me was kind of dangerous because I have no discipline. But what I found interesting about her is that she would look at any cancellations for the day, and she would fill them. She'd call people that were in the afternoon to come in. She'd call people from the 1 or 2 or 3 days out, and she would make sure that book was filled every day. And there's a conversion rate in that, right? So if you have 30 or let's say 20 appointments available for the day, and and 5 cancel, right? So you can actually convert and say, okay, you have a 75% fill rate, right? There's almost a conversion rate for almost anything to think about it. And so her job was to keep that book above 90%. That was the golden number. Keep it 90% full. And she worked her butt off, and she called out days, and she every day like clockwork had people coming in from appointments that were reached out a week or 2 or 3 to get them in now. And I loved her passion. I loved the cookies, but I loved her passion to keep that book full. Now, not everybody has to worry about keeping their book full, but certainly, and sometimes when a patient doesn't come in, you almost say, okay, it's good, I'm getting a break. I got an extra 20 minutes or a half hour to breathe. But for the most part, what it really demonstrates is that this person understood that how important her role was to the livelihood of everybody in the practice. Because if that book isn't full, the practice fails. So it's an important component of what we're talking about and how this contributes to everybody in the practice, our patients, and of course our EBITDA.
So, everything kind of revolves back around. I mean, this is how we got started with this is the areas that we wanted that we could track. If we think about tracking, I think that was a great idea. I love the suggestion that you said on printing out the schedule. Just there's nothing wrong with pen and paper. I know sometimes we want to get away from it, but there is nothing wrong sometimes with, I say we're all old school, I guess. Is that what we're saying? But, we can write it down. There's nothing wrong with it in some cases. But, you can find out a lot from things like that. And I love the suggestion that you had on kind of flagging patients that were the ones that kind of no-showed the most or canceled, before, so that we can kind of double book. There's a lot of pieces to the pie in scheduling. I am going to say a lot. And, when we want to try to bring things all together, the last piece of this is conversations. It's about staff. It's about I know we've said it several times here already, but it's about the staff being on the same page. It's the technicians in the back. So, when we pick up this next section here, this is where we're going to be talking a little bit more about staff and ways that the staff can affect our EBITDA. And I'm going to tell you, in more cases than one, I think they can make you or break you. So, when we think about those types of things, give me some suggestions here.
Well, Patty, when you think about it, the patient spends a lot more time with your staff than they do with the doctor. Mm-hmm. And it's really important that your staff is basically sees your vision and lives it out, and they're an extension of you. That's super important. And the only way those things can happen is if you can communicate that vision and lead them. So you've got to meet with them, and we usually would do a once monthly complete staff meeting. But then on top of that, you should have some leaders of your departments that you can meet with on a more efficient, more regular basis to keep the goals that you have set with the whole staff in mind, and on a daily to a weekly basis, see where you are and what needs to be done. What are the obstacles that are standing in your way to get between where you are now and where your goal is?
Yeah, I think you called that a team huddle. Is that what you call a team huddle?
Yeah. Those huddles are important.
There's things that you could bring to the team huddle, every morning. We could think about the items that, just some staff tracking. It's very simple. Hey, we want to have a conversation about what's our goal for anti-reflective coatings. Where are we at? Let's talk about it. What is our goal for our average frame sale? You can pick the items to have at the huddle. I always tell everybody, it's okay to have 3 or 4 things. It's easier to concentrate on 3 or 4 things than it is to concentrate on, 12 things all at once. It's okay. But, these team huddles are crucially important. And there's different ways. Some people would just have them every morning. Just as simple as saying, okay, I know you guys were talking about it a few minutes ago. Here's how many exams we have today. This is what we have the opportunity to convert 50% of those. And here's how much revenue we could bring in. And then having that conversation, you're then able to tomorrow say, hey, guess what? We made it. And you could celebrate. I call it kind of celebrating my successes along the way. How did you do that, Ron?
Yeah, you got to keep people motivated. So, it doesn't always have to be monetary, although it can be. But, just set up some inter-office challenges and games, and, people like to interact with each other. They're behind the scenes, a couple of digs on this and that. And yeah, I can beat you on this one. And it makes the things more interesting. And then when they do get those goals, as you said, you need to celebrate. So do something special for the staff. Bring in lunch from a local restaurant, or even take them out to lunch. But, take the time to celebrate the positives. And during the day, when you're just doing those little quick things, like an instant message to somebody or something you throw on the whiteboard when things may be not going the way you want them to, make sure there's some positives on there. Don't have it all be negative and, do this better, do that better. Celebrate the positives. That makes a big difference.
It's everything you're talking about makes so much sense. In the past, I think one of the most important things about goal setting in and of itself is to set attainable goals. People say, okay, our AR is at 40%. I want to be at 70% next year. It just doesn't work that way, right? So I think the first component of making sure that your team is being set up for success is to say, okay, we're at 40%. Next month, I'd like to be at 45. And the month after that, I'd like to be at 50, and gradually move them up. The other good part about gradually moving folks up is you get these cognitive changes, right? You get the behavior changes you're looking for, so that it becomes sustainable, so that by the time they do get to 70%, it actually is built into them now, right? But those folks who have these great contests and the numbers go nuts for 30 days, and then they fall off a cliff the month afterwards and the numbers go back down because we have not built in those behavior changes. So I think the first component of that is to set attainable, short, small goals, and we could just keep going up the steps. The other part that adds on to what you're talking about, which I love, is it really has to do with the book on languages of appreciation. Like, we really need to understand what makes people happy, how to show each member of our staff appreciation, because everybody's got their own definition of how they like to be shown appreciation. So those are all about the love languages and languages of appreciation. And we as leaders and managers should know each personality in our team, and we should know what makes that person happy, what makes that person feel special, so I can acknowledge them the right way. The last part is what you said about positive and being positive with your team. Nothing is more important. If the only time you talk to your team is to tell them what they're doing wrong, shame on you. Oh my God. It's no different than raising kids, right? If you only talk to your kids when to criticize them or tell them they're doing something wrong, they might grow up to be a little bit unruly. So, we love the idea of rock star boards. And every time someone in your staff does something special for a patient, goes out of their way, does something extraordinary, you put a star up on the board and the whole team can acknowledge them, right? And maybe that person gets lunch for a week or an extra, maybe that person gets 4 hours of extra PTO, whatever the case may be that person appreciates. So this conversation, as it relates to creating attainable goals, short, constant goals, acknowledgement, positive reinforcement, it's amazing. And I wouldn't have been able to have this conversation 6-7 years ago, but I'm certainly having it now. It's amazing when you think about it. We used to say, this is how you're going to impact the bottom line. But the bottom line today is defined as EBITDA. So now this is how all that's going to impact your EBITDA and help you run a happier ship.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I know you had made a statement there on a whiteboard, and really when we talk about a whiteboard, I know we can see my screen, but you can simply set up a whiteboard just like this. Have your staff's names across the top. Have your 3 or 4 items over here on the left. Put it in the break room. And, when somebody reaches it, like you said, put a happy smiley face right here beside it or a star. That's part of the celebrating along the way. I had an office tell me that, during COVID, she had a hard time trying to celebrate. She always took her staff out to eat lunch, and that was something they couldn't do. So she tried to think outside the box, and she decided on ice cream parties. She went to the store, bought all kinds of flavors of ice cream. She got sprinkles and toppings and cones. And when they made their goals, they had an ice cream party. And guess what?
I'm in.
I knew you would be. That's why I had to tell you this.
That's a no-brainer for me.
Her staff had more fun having an ice cream party than going to lunch. Yep. And that is outside the box. It doesn't necessarily have to be something huge. There's just Patty, nothing wrong with taking a break.
That reminds me. So back in the early days when we were having our GPN meetings and traveling around the country trying to share philosophies, we had a meeting where there was no ice cream. And I'm a little bit of a ice cream fanatic. I have to have my ice cream. And so we went to this Baskin & Robbins, and I bought a 5-gallon tub of ice cream, and I brought the ice cream back to the lobby of the hotel and started spooning out the ice cream to everybody. And then the hotel manager came over because it wasn't allowed. And I was like, I dare you to stop me from giving away free ice cream. We had such a blast with the ice cream. But so I think ice cream is one of the love languages.
Should be. So, when we're thinking about, that's just one way of celebrating, and again, it's just like you said, we just can't always tell people what they're doing wrong. And, my favorite thing that I like to say is, you don't want to tell somebody you're doing this correctly, but I hate the but word. It's something comes after.
I think another thing that really helps along this area is when you're initially setting up your goals, get the staff input on what are the steps, what are the things that we can do differently to get from A to Z. And I think once they do that and they join in and they'll come up with some great ideas, there's a lot more buy-in there, and it's easier to meet your goals when they're invested in it.
I love that. You're 100% right. The collaboration on setting the goals and is huge, especially if the ideas on how to impact them is coming from your staff and they have that ownership involved in it. You're 100% right. 100% right.
And we always have to remember that there's sometimes people don't want to speak up. Obviously Jay and I don't have a problem talking.
I'm a little bashful myself.
Oh, yeah, right. But there are some people that don't want to speak up, and there's nothing wrong with saying, just type out some ideas in a Word document and you can anonymously, put it on a desk or a suggestion box or something like that, because you can have some people that just don't want to speak up. And the reason I like to say that is I did work with an office at one time that she was constantly giving them bonuses, which was a great thing. Everybody wants a bonus, right? I mean, we love getting that monetary thing. But she said, they're just not happy. I can't make them happy. And I said, well, why don't you kind of do a suggestion box on what they might want? And ironically enough, they wanted a new refrigerator for the office. She was giving them money and they were having to go out and buy lunch every day. So they really didn't get the money because they didn't have anywhere to keep the food for lunch. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with the suggestion box at the same time.
For sure, for sure.
So we can kind of see how all this kind of plays back into our EBITDA. We just think about, we got to track. We're going to kind of round it up here and say we have to track. You want to make sure what the low-hanging fruit is in your business. Where's your most opportunities? We do know that we've got to, make the most out of our vision plans. We really need to make the most out of all of our patients, not just our vision care plan patients.
All patient interactions need that focus. And it's interesting because we use the word track, and of course I agree with that. But I think what coincides with that is the fact that we need to share, and we need our team to understand what we're looking at. We need our team to understand what this means, and have these conversations with them and saying, here's what we're looking at, here's what it means. Let's put a plan together to impact these numbers. If we're just holding this information to ourselves and we're not really properly sharing it with our team, what good is the information?
Exactly.
If you educate them and you celebrate your wins and you motivate them, they can take your vision and turn it into a reality 5 times quicker than you could have done it.
100% great. And I'll leave you on this note, which has always been a philosophy at GPN and all of our consultants in the industry for so many years, is, we kind of coined the phrase safe environment to fail. And what that really means is, in order to have a proactive team that's not bashful about change, that's not putting a wall up for change, and that is engaged and proactively thinking of ways of doing things better, you also need to understand that everything they do is not going to be right and it's not going to work. But you still have to thank them for trying, right? So we know that even ourselves, everything we try and everything we're going to think about is not going to be successful. But we keep trying, and that's what creates the success, that we don't stop trying. And so I encourage everybody to think about it that way and understand that if you have a team member that says, hey, I want to try this, even if you don't agree with them, let them try it. Maybe they'll prove you wrong. Maybe they'll find an easier way to do something. Maybe there'll be a learning outcome. And even if they fail, just say thank you. Thank you that they were even willing to try or willing to even think that way. So providing a safe environment to fail is also another way you're going to help grow a healthy business. Well, this has been a fantastic time working with Dr. Mika and Patty and having these discussions. I think these discussions are so important to everything we do. We really need to get it out there and make as many folks aware of how to think through some of the things we're talking about. So I want to thank you all for joining us, and certainly look forward to the iThrive platform delivering so much more great content for the industry. Thank you for everybody.